For the wages of sin is death. Did you know that's what God's word says? And few of us understand the gravity of that situation. What it's telling us is that when we break God's law, when we fall short of his perfect standard, then we deserve execution. This was the charge brought against Adam and Eve and their sentence given to them, cast out of the garden to die. That every single one of us, because we have sinned in thought, word, and deed, by commission, by doing bad things, and omission, by not doing the good things that we should, we all deserve death. Now that's a grave situation. If we thought about it seriously, we would see that the hangman's noose, that the guillotine's blade, that the firing squad's guns were all pointed at us, that our execution was imminent, that we deserved. Now that's heavy. And what we celebrate on Good Friday is that Jesus died our death. You see, we deserved a punishment. We deserved an execution for our sin. And yet, Jesus died our death. That's what we read in Isaiah chapter 53, verses 7 through 9. In verse 7, a prophecy is foretold about the servant of the Lord, the Messiah, who we know was fulfilled in Jesus. It says in verse 7, "He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth." When Jesus was put on trial, he did not testify to defend himself. Verse 8, it says, "By oppression and judgment he was taken away. Yet who of his generation protested?" No, in fact, when he was put up for trial and he was given a death sentence, though he had done nothing wrong, his generation abandoned him. His disciples who loved him, who followed him, ran away and fled. They denied even knowing him in the case of Peter. One of them, Judas, was the one who betrayed him in the first place. And then it says, who of his generation protested? Even when Pontius Pilate gave Jesus' generation an opportunity to free Jesus from that punishment, they said, "No, give us Barabbas. Free the actual criminal, not Jesus." And it says in the second half of verse 8, "For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was punished." Jesus died our death. Verse 9, it says, "He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth." You see, Jesus never sinned. No sin is recorded of him. I think his siblings could have recorded some sin that he had done in his youth, but they had none. In fact, two of them became his followers and wrote books of the Bible. We know them as the books of James and Jude. No one had anything wrong to say against Jesus except false accusations. Jesus had no sin in him, yet he died our death. What's interesting and fascinating about this prophecy is that it says he was assigned a grave with the wicked, that he was punished and executed, which is what a crucifixion was, the death of the wicked. And yet, in the second line of verse 9 it says, "And with the rich in his death." How is that possible? Criminals usually had their bodies taken down from a cross when they were executed, and their bones were scattered and thrown so that dogs could eat them. But yet, that's not what happened to Jesus' body. In fact, a rich man named Joseph of Arimathea, as the scriptures record, took his body and placed him in his own tomb, the tomb that was guarded by the Roman soldiers until it was empty on the third day. You see, this prophecy came and was fulfilled in Jesus and in Jesus alone. Jesus died our death. What's so important for us to learn is that Jesus was our substitute. He died our death. In the movie The Hunger Games, or in the books that came out several years ago, was the story of a battle that would take place with teenagers representing villages. And once a year, somebody was called to represent the village, a young boy and a young woman in battle, and was chosen on that specific year at the start of the story, a young girl by the name of Primrose. But Primrose was just a young child. and her older sister, Katniss, decided that she would step in and offer herself as tribute in the place of her sister, that so she would go into the Hunger Games to fight, to suffer, and potentially die in her sister's place. If you read the books or watch the movies, you know that that is a moving scene.
I volunteer! I volunteer! I volunteer as tribute.
When Katniss steps up to say, I will be your substitute, I will be the tribute, I will stand in your place. Well, that's exactly what Jesus did for us. Jesus died our death. There was a comic strip in BC, an old comic by Johnny Hart. And in that comic strip, one of the cavemen is saying, I hate the term Good Friday, to which his friend says, why? And then the first caveman says, my Lord was hanged on that day. To which the second man replies, if you were going to be hanged on that day and he volunteered to take your place, how would you feel? To which the first man replied, good. The second man, of course, said, have a nice day, and walked away. You see, the thought that Jesus and the realization that Jesus died our death, that he took our place, that he was a substitute, that he offered himself as a tribute, not just to go into a games and face death, but actually die in our place. Well, that's what Jesus was when he was led like a sheep to the slaughter. He faced the execution that we deserve for our sin. And because of that, when we put our faith in Jesus, in that death, what he did 2,000 years ago, we know that we will live. So I hope as you're watching this on this Good Friday, that you would realize the gravity of your sin, but even greater, you would realize the greatness, the goodness of Jesus' death, because Jesus died our death.